Okay, so the recording has started, I believe. So yes, Faisal, you had a question.
So when we were talking about parasitic extraction, we get to know like these are the parasites in our circuit after the post layout analysis only. Like, then why is that a step? I couldn't get it actually. Like after the post layout analysis, we get to know कि हाँ हम लोग का 500 पिकोसेकंड चाहिए था लेकिन we got 550. तो हाँ, this is because of parasites. Then
Mhm.
वो स्टेप क्यों है? Why is that step? Parasitic extraction फिर क्या है?
So you tell me, unless you have a layout, will you be able to estimate what is the real capacitance of a wire?
No, no sir.
So once you have a layout, there is a step in which we estimate these parasitic capacitances and resistances.
Uh, so how do we estimate them? Like,
So there are lookup tables. So there are two kinds of tools for that. One kind of tools actually do a 3D, make a 3D model that, okay, this is my wire, this is my gate, this is another wire on the left side, another one on the right side. It will actually make the line of fields, and then it will say what is the capacitance by measuring the number of line of fields that will be intersected when you try to find a capacitance between two wires. That is that these are called 3D extractors. They actually make a 3D model of all your stuff. And another set of extractors don't go into that great detail. They simply say that, okay, there's this wire, it is in the configuration of one wire on this side, another wire on that side. This is the spacing between these three wires. So I have made an LUT, a lookup table already in my backend. Okay, so I did a 3D analysis earlier, long back. I have a LUT now, so I can quickly tell you what the capacitance is. Now this will not be exact capacitance. It will be deviating
approximate.
by say 2 to 5%, but that's
Okay,
good enough accuracy for me. So yeah, that is what a parasitic extractor does.
okay. Now understood, sir. Sir, and one more thing, can I?
Yes, Faisal.
Yeah. So it is about EUV when we were talking about EUV, the 13 nanometer light. So you said that it will reduce the mask, the number of masks. So how will it reduce? I mean,
Yeah, we will come into that aspect today. Don't worry.
okay, sir. Thank you.
Mhm. Yes. Sagandeep, you have a question?
Yes, sir. Sir, last time when you talked about the substrate coupling, so at that point you told us about the guard rings. So, sir, that guard ring would not be, I mean, continuous thing, right? Even if I share all the PP and NP, and if I put a guard ring for G and D below the NP region, and then for the PP the VDD one, so I cannot really make sure for a very large circuit that okay, this much guard ring for VDD and G and D would be very continuous. There would be still some gaps, right?
So that is my choice. I can actually ensure that there are no gaps by making a continuous ring. But even if there are gaps, if the gaps are small enough, the guard ring will still be very effective simply because what did you need? You needed a place where the resistance to GNDS, that is the substrate supply, or VDDS, the substrate supply of the N well, is very low. So even if you do not have a real continuous guard ring, the a broken guard ring would also be good to make. Though a continuous shielding kind of a guard ring is definitely much safer and preferred.
Okay, so it's about that how good I am. I mean, मतलब कितना अच्छा layout बना पा रहे हैं.
Moreover, not just that, Gagan, it is also that like if making a continuous guard ring requires you to increase the area a bit, rather than just giving it a short break of say zero 0.5 micron somewhere and you save the area, then you would rather save area. Unless, yes, your digital circuits, which are very noisy, are placed right next door and you can't afford any noise. So then you will give area also. But otherwise, so most of the times, a slightly broken guard ring may also be fine.
Okay, sir.
Sir,
Yes.
so with
Radha?
yes, so with respect to the guard rings, so basically we're just trying to provide a least resistance path from the substrate to these power supplies, right? This you're trying to do.
We're giving a connection to the substrate, a low resistance connection to the substrate, so that if there is any current that is coming, it will follow or flow through these power supplies now, instead of entering into the zone where you have a sensitive circuit placed there.
So basically, we are any stray current that is in the substrate, we're giving a path to just delete
We're
out.
giving it a sink, yes.
Okay, and so one more thing. So in this substrate in the substrate coupling only, sir, the noisy part was the digital part, right? I mean, because they are like fluctuating at a very high frequency. That was the thing, right? And we are saving the analog part.
So it can be vice versa also, but digital usually has more noise margins. So it is not required to save the digital parts. Noise margins are relatively lower in analog circuits. That is why this is the common understanding and common usage. Both can impact each other with noise. One functionality would get impacted, the other side, the functionality would not get impacted. So that is where we say that, okay, digital has large noise margins. So the noise that analog will inject there will not have much consequence. So a guard ring is essentially protecting the analog part. But in fact, it is also stopping the noise from analog part to go into the digital part. It is doing that also.
Okay, sir.
Priyanka, you had a question?
Sir, last time we discussed like we can't make 28 nanometer dimension from 193 nanometer wavelength. So I didn't understand like how we are relating this wavelength with dimension, that this wavelength can't make this dimension.
Okay, so I ask you that you have a pencil with a tip, it's a blunt pencil with a tip of, let us say, 5 millimeters.
Okay.
I want you to draw a line of 1 millimeter thickness with it.
Yeah. So we can't make that. Yeah.
No, you can. You just hold the pencil at a particular angle and draw it. You will still be able to make a 1 millimeter thick line, is it not?
Yeah. Can be.
Yeah. So in the same way, for light, we also need to handle light as an engineer now. Okay, carefully, in a very ingenious manner, I would say, so that even a larger wavelength of light, like 193 is the wavelength of light, but see, even until 28 we are able to use without EUV.
Yes.
So हम कुछ तो कर ही पाए ना?
मतलब सर like I didn't understand मैं wavelength को dimension से compare कैसे कर रहे हैं?
So what is okay? So we will look at the photolithography process in a little while. Probably that is when it will become clearer to you. If not, then we can pick this question up again. Is that okay, Priyanka?
Okay, sir. Thank you.
But please park this question. I want you to have clarity on this. But since we will just be covering it, so आप एक बार अगर तब भी clear नहीं होगा, then you ask again.
Okay, sir.
Sure.
Sir.
Yes, Naman.
Sir, just to confirm, like guard rings can be used to avoid the latch-up issues, right?
Guard rings will, yes, they will also avoid latch-up issues. Any substrate connection, any good substrate connection will avoid latch-up.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Priyanka, you have some more question also?
No, sir. I will just raise down.
Gagandeep?
Yes, sir. I was asking that if I am making a capacitor on a circuit, if metal, insulator, metal, so is that more than Moore?
Is that more than?
More than Moore thing that we were talking about, that if something I am not making in CMOS technology, then I can call it more than Moore.
Yes, you can think of it like that. Though capacitances are not really different materials or different technology. You actually have capacitances of wires already. You just made a structure which would increase that capacitance. So this capacitances would not be coming under the category of more than Moore. But yes, having capacitances on board will enable more kinds of circuits to be added to your design, and therefore will give more value, even if you do not scale. So even if you are at, say, 28 nanometer only, but you added two different kinds of capacitors which were denser. So your ADC area will shrink. You can think of making your memories and flip-flops more robust by using those capacitors in there. You can embed DRAMs onto your chips. So all those things you can do. So you will add more value to the customer without actually scaling technology from 28 to, let us say, 20. Okay. So if you look at it from that perspective, that are you able to add more value without scaling the technology, then yes, this is more than more. But this is not the traditional definition of more than more. When we say more than more technologies, we actually are talking about either very high voltage management or things like image sensors or like MEMS and stuff like that. Capacitors are passive components which were already being manufactured. So it's okay. So capacitors and inductors, they're in the gray zone. Capacitors and inductors, at times you may call them as RF technology and you may say this is more than more. Someone else may say no, they were already there. So it depends. Different companies would use different terminology there.
Okay.
Okay. So anything else from the past session? Yes, Pranjal.
Sir, making capacitor in the IC is itself very difficult. So how we are using it in our IC package?
Why do you say it is very difficult? There's a technology to make those capacitors.
Yeah,
So
but-
that technology requires more mask steps. That is one thing, but yeah, it is done.
Okay.
It's just like you have high VT devices, low VT devices, SVT, standard VT devices, and there are different mask steps for these. Similarly, for capacitors also, there's an extra mask step, and you can make the capacitor.
Okay, sir.
Devjit?
Yes, sir. Sir, talking about more than more, it is basically diversification means, for example, if we change complete architecture of a design, for example, if we are moving from, say, Intel to ARM, so in that case, in ARM processors, we know that in a single die, we are able to package like memory as well as processor as well, means also the DRAM part as well. So does it come under more than more, or is it means in the direction of more only? Because here we are reducing the area and packaging more things in a die.
Yeah, whatever it is, but Devjit, what I was not clear about was why did you bring in Intel and ARM? They're both microprocessor companies. So what difference does Intel or ARM bring to it?
Sir, recently when the M1 chip came out, they were talking more about like integrating in a single die the NAND flash as well as processor as well as
So that
neural
is because you're integrating more stuff into die, you're going towards the dimension of system in package. So that system in package concept is more than more, but Intel also does it. And ARM based chips would also do it. So that is where I could not make out. So that would be more than more for sure, because it is more than one die in a package. It is adding more value without really scaling the technology. So we can call it more than more. But both Intel and ARM do it. So I could not make out the distinction, why you made that distinction there.
Sir, not it's not about the distinction, but my question was, if we completely change the architecture and bring on features like this, it would be more than more, or just in the direction of more?
So independent of the architecture change, if you bring in a system in package, we will call it more than more.
Okay, sir.
With Intel, even if with Intel you do it, you will call it more than more dimension for Intel.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So anything else, or we move forward? Okay. So a few logistics, because Saturday is a Monday timetable. My office hours will be tomorrow evening from 5 to 6 p.m. So we had agreed that my office hours will be on Saturdays from 5 to 6 p.m. And Bilal's office hours were to be on Saturdays from 12 to 1 p.m. But because tomorrow is a Monday timetable, you will have an OOPD class. So Bilal's office hours will be on Monday. Is that okay? And I know all of you are now engrossed with the second statement over there, that there is a quiz tomorrow at 6 p.m. after my office hours. Okay, so that is the quick housekeeping part. quiz will be simple. Don't worry. You don't need to. You just need to be with the lectures, refresh your understanding of whatever we have done. We just done introduction to VLSI, है ना? So don't worry. It will be simple questions, but yeah, we will start with the quizzes so that we do end up having good number of quizzes to take the best 10 from. Okay. Then we come to the next part of the course, next part of this introduction to VLSI, which is fabrication. Yes.
Sir?
What will be the duration of the quiz?
Yeah, that we will tell you on the classroom. Don't worry.
Okay.
Okay. So we will announce all that in the classroom.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, can we shift the quiz timing because we have a TA meetings at 6 tomorrow, 6 p.m.
Is that always going to be on Mondays?
No, sir, just tomorrow.
Can you request them to shift the meeting? Is it possible for you to request them?
Sir, it is already means.
How long is that meeting?
He's defined out at 6.
So how long?
Don't know, sir. It's the first meeting.
So check with them.
Okay.
We can start at 6:30 or 7 also. No issues.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Okay. Yeah. So fabrication, we'll give a very quick intro. So there is, you already know that there is a one full course on IC fabrication that is also running in this semester. The intent is not to take you through that course, but give you a very quick glimpse of what that course also contains. Okay. So all of you know that we use, so the standard bread and butter of semiconductors today is silicon. All of you know that? So why silicon? Any ideas?
So because we, first of all, we get in the particular band gap, we get the right gap, band gap thing. And it's a group for, we have the 4 valence electrons, and we cannot have carbon because that becomes too tightly bonded. So here we get the kind of properties that at a temperature higher than 0 Kelvin, we get the semiconductor properties. So, and it's also really easily available sand, it's there. So that is also there.
Okay. Other ideas?
A small leakage current and high temperature applications.
दोबारा से बोलो, small leakage current
and high temperature applications.
And high temperature applications. They will be better with germanium actually.
But small leakage current is more in germanium.
Okay.
They're abundantly available, sir, silicon. And
Okay.
it can be positively doped or negatively doped. So that
It can be?
Positively doped or negatively doped, so that we can get an extrinsic or intrinsic. Sorry, we can get a positive or negative. It's an extrinsic. If you dope that with something, it's an extrinsic. So yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Also, it is non-toxic.
Lakshay?
CP available.
Okay. Samyak, you're also saying something?
It is non-toxic also.
It is?
Non-toxic.
It is non-toxic. Okay.
Compared to other group 4.
Okay.
Comfortable with wide range of temperature.
Wide range of temperature. Okay.
It can be purified to high purity.
Wow. So many benefits of using silicon. Huh?
High switching speed. Power handling capacity is also high in comparison to germanium.
In comparison to?
Germanium.
Germanium. Okay. But what about silicon carbide? Why not silicon carbide? Silicon carbide can handle much more power voltage.
Silicon carbide forms ionic bondage.
Okay, so all of us know so many properties of silicon. Why are these properties of silicon so evident there? What is it that gives silicon its properties like that?
The atomic structure of silicon.
Crystalline structure. The crystalline structure of silicon. Yes, great. So when we talk of crystalline structure, what is a crystal?
So basically, we can say that repetitive arrangement of atoms.
Mhm. When the atoms of a material are arranged in a repetitive manner for a very long distance, we call it as a crystal. Otherwise, there will be some arrangement of atoms which could change every now and then. So we call it polycrystalline or amorphous. But when there is a systematic arrangement of atoms for a long range, we call that as crystalline. In fact, in one crystal, it is only one arrangement of atoms. As soon as that arrangement of atom changes, we call it as a second crystal. So the most common crystalline structure that we know of is, simple cubic. So repetitive arrangement of atoms, and there are different kinds of ones. Simple cubic, body centered, face centered. We'll just look at them, and then we understand that as you change the type of crystal structure, the various features like density, physical properties, chemical properties, and even electrical properties of materials change. Diamond has very different chemical properties and electrical properties than graphite. Both are pure carbon. And that difference is largely because of different structure of the crystal. Am I right? Different arrangement of atoms in the two materials, and the properties are entirely different, even though the chemical composition is same. So crystalline structure has, or the crystal structure has significant bearing on, say, physical and electrical properties, and that is what we are interested in as of now. Okay, so this is face-centered cubic structure, where you have the atoms at the boundary of, or at the edges, at the vertices of the cuboid, but you also have atoms at the faces. Okay, this is face-centered cubic, and this is diamond cubic. So what has happened over here? In a diamond cubic structure, what you've done is, in addition to these atoms at the center of the faces, you also add atoms in 4 of the internal 8 short cubes, small cubes. So you have atoms inside different small cubes. In total, there will be 8 small cubes inside. Out of those 8 small cubes, there are atoms in 4 of them. And they are organized like this. I believe all of you must have studied this in your semiconductor physics in 11th and 12th, if not later. Anyone who has not studied it, please put a -1 in your chat window. I believe all of us must have seen this in our 11th, 12th, or even later than that. Okay. So this is diamond cubic structure. And let us look at a short animation of how this diamond cubic structure looks like from different perspectives. Okay. So this is we're just rotating a diamond cubic crystal. And you notice that when I try to see at different angles, I would see different density, and therefore different physical properties will appear. So what all will change? Let us say I want to send an electron from one side to the other, and there is this large density of atoms there. The electron will experience lots of resistance to pass. Whereas when you have that hexagonal view there, like this one, you will see that electrons will pass easily. So the direction in which I am trying to move my current, the electrical properties will also vary. The physical properties will also vary depending on what is happening. Okay. So what is happening is that in different planes, there is a different density of atoms and even different topology of atoms. Therefore, they have different electrical properties, and therefore, it is very important that when we design or when we fabricate any device, we should fabricate it very carefully in the desired plane. Are you able to see this challenge? So we can easily make silicon crystals. So have you done some experiments with crystallizing, say, alum or sugar or something in your school times? Make a solution of sugar and crystallize it. You done such kind of experiments in school days?
Yes, sir.
Huh? So can you ascertain that this is the plane in which all the crystals are formed? When you do a regular such experiment, are you able to ascertain that?
No.
No. So what we are saying is that when we want to make silicon crystals for fabrication purpose, because the properties of the crystal, electrical properties of the crystal are different across different planes, and I have all my models and all my process assumptions based on one kind of plane, so I rather would have my electrons flowing in that direction. Are you able to see this point? That the crystalline plane has to be, the plane in which you will fabricate your devices has to be carefully chosen. So the crystal has to be carefully manufactured. It cannot be just like the home experiments on crystallizing of sugar that you did. Are you able to see this? Any questions around this topic?
Sir.
Yes, Rajneesh.
Sir, so you are saying that in that previous 3D diagram of diamond, say we take any two planes, that are similar.
I'm sorry, दोबारा से बोलो.
सर जो इसके पहले आपने वो डायमंड का 3D स्ट्रक्चर दिखाया था, उसमें अगर हम लोग कोई सर स्टेटमेंट के हिसाब से ना.
So yes, if you change the direction of electron flow, it will see different kind of resistivity.
Okay, okay.
है ना?
तो सर हम लोग क्रिस्टल बनाने के बाद एग्जैक्टली उसमें इलेक्ट्रॉन का फ्लो करेंगे ताकि हमें पता चल सके कि कौन सा प्लेन हमारा एग्जैक्टली सही है.
Can you do that? Because crystal बन गया फिर तो वेस्ट हो जाएगा ना?
तो सर क्रिस्टल बनाने से पहले तो हम लोग कैसे उसको कर सकते हैं, मतलब हमें इसी प्लेन के लिए जरूरत चाहिए, जैसे कि हमें पता है कि वो तो क्रिस्टल तो मतलब बनता चला जाएगा जैसे हम लोग बनाएंगे.
So there has to be some more process that should go in, is it not?
Yes.
Crystallizing or using even though sand is abundantly available, you cannot make a silicon wafer at home. Just like you could make a sugar crystal at home, मिश्री आप बना सकते थे घर पे. You cannot do the same for silicon wafers. Is this thing clear?
Yes.
So then because if this thing is clear, we can then move to the next step of how this wafer is fabricated. So the complexity of VLSI design or VLSI fabrication starts from the very base of how to manufacture this crystal, which has the same direction and the same plane as we want it to be in. Okay. So what is done is we use a silicon crystal and we dip it in molten silicon. And this silicon crystal that we have, we put it so carefully into our instrument so that when it goes deep, dips into the molten crystal, it then starts to crystallize. It solidifies according to the crystal's orientation. So the orientation of my seed crystal is carefully chosen and determined, and only then you dip it into there. Okay, and then you slowly pull out this crystal from this molten mass, and the speed with which you pull it out, so you rotate it and you pull it out, the speed with which you pull it out will define the width of this ingot. So this is called as ingot. Okay, and based on this, you will be able to make 6 inches, 8 inches, or 12-inch wafers. 12-inch wafer is this big, diametrically. Okay, so I can actually literally hide my face behind a 12-inch. Even an 8-inch wafer, it can fairly hide my face, though probably not my hair, but a 12-inch will hide everything of my face and hair. Okay, so this big wafers coming out of it. And can you imagine the weight of this whole ingot as it would pull it out? And a 12-inch wafer, you know, so it's huge. So this process is called, so read it. This is a Czechoslovakian phrase. So Czechoslovakian process. Okay. So this is how ingots are made. Once the ingots are made, do you see that this ingot has a lot of these contours on its surface? Are you able to see this?
Yes,
So what this means is that this ingot cannot be used directly to make wafers, because then some wafers will be 12-inch wide or 12-inch diameter, some would be 12.1, others would be 12.2, and so on. But all your machines are designed for we need nanometer level accuracy in our machines. So the machines are designed such that they handle 12-inch wafers. So you cannot really handle 12.1 inch also and 12.2 inch also and then say, oh, I will give you the accuracy of nanometers when I expose or when I make your wafers, or when I make your silicon dies. So here itself, the process has to be, something needs to be done so that each wafer is exactly 12 inches.
Sir,
Yes.
सर जो ये इंस्ट्रूमेंट है इससे एक एक क्रिस्टल हम प्रोड्यूस करते हैं.
And this is one crystal. This ingot is one crystal in total.
ओके, सो फिर वेफर कैसे फॉर्म हो रहा है?
Sorry?
वेफर कैसे फॉर्म हो रहा है?
Because we just put in one crystal, and as we are pulling it out from that molten material, the silicon atoms would align to the existing crystalline structure. So they would be just one crystal there.
I don't get it, sir.
Yeah, so then this is not an IC, of course. You will need to probably read a little more of it off the course. But yeah, this is the way you dip a crystal there, and now because this is the property of the material that atoms will bond with other atoms in the orientation of the existing crystal.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, and then when you slowly pull it out, those atoms are now a part of that earlier crystal, so they become a bigger crystal. Okay, and then as you pull it out, it becomes a still bigger crystal, crystal, and until you reach that width, of, let us say 12.5 inches, you just pull it out very, very slowly. You pull it out, and then you say that, okay, now at a stable speed, I will pull it out so that all the crystals are that 12-inch, approximately 12.5 inch wide wafer there.
Okay, so बहुत delicate procedure होता होगा, I think.
Yes.
Okay.
You can't do it at home.
Yeah.
So we can relate this with the cotton candy machine that it is like forming.
Okay, if you want to relate it with that, I will not, but yeah, it's okay. Whichever helps you in your understanding. Raghav?
Sir, like for example, you said that we are not only interested in manufacturing the silicon crystal, but a particular orientation. So, sir, like we put the crystal in a particular orientation and we pulled it out. So, but still, for example, we are getting the whole crystal. And if we are getting the crystal, all the particular orientations are still possible. So we need to then have to be in direction also, na, ki, okay, this is from where can I get the orientation? Like, because I cannot access the orientation.
So when you are seeding, at that point of time, the orientation is established with the help of a microscope.
So, but still I'm getting the crystal, right?
Yeah.
So in crystal, every orientation is possible.
Yeah, that is fine. But आपने अगर इस तरह के plane में बनाया तो इसी तरह के plane में ऊपर बढ़ेगा ना?
Okay.
If you have a crystal with this kind of a plane, then it will grow like this only. Whichever plane you choose, that is how it will grow. That is the property of a crystal.
Okay, so I have chosen the plane also. Okay, this
Yes.
is the plane. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Vaishnav?
Sir, ingot is something that holds the silicon crystals.
Ingot is that huge mass of silicon, circular mass of silicon, through which you will slice and get the crystals.
Okay, sir. Okay.
That is what we are going to look at in this slide. So you first get that ingot, and then you slice it to make crystals, to make wafers. These wafers then you grind so that they are all circular, because we just saw that they may not be all circular at all times. So then the grinding is done so that you get circular wafers of exactly 12-inch diameter or 8-inch diameter or 6-inch diameter, whichever your machining is ready for. Okay. And
Okay.
then because you
That's-
slice these crystals, so you've tried to cut, let us say, slices of cucumber or tomato at home for making salad.
Yes, sir.
Can you always cut them in the same width?
No, sir.
So it can happen that some wafers are thicker, some are not as thick. But again, realize that our machining is such that it has to make things which are accurate to the level of nanometers. So you cannot really have different thickness of wafers, otherwise the light that will fall from the top will not fall at the side right angle. Okay.
Sir, this is the reason why we'll get the wafer in a circular shape. We are dipping it out, and the way it spreads, it will be a circle. One of the
That is
person
why
has
it is
already.
circular. So this was a question in the last class as to why don't we make it square? Now, if I have to make it square, I have to cut some part of the circular wafer, which actually leads to more loss of, if in a circular wafer, you will probably be able to get more dyes than a square which has a smaller size than it. So in lapping, in the second step that you do lapping, you actually make the thickness of the wafers exactly, let us say, 5 millimeters or 2 millimeters or whatever is the agreed specification for that particular wafer. Okay. Then you do the polishing, because all this grinding and lapping, there could be some broken bonds and dislocations that you may have introduced on the surface of the wafer. So you do the polishing, and then you dope it. The substrate is typically P-type doped, and you then create a flat. So you dope boron into it, let us say, so it is P-type, and then what you do with the circular wafer, you create a flat over here, a little flat. When you have an N-type, then you also create a secondary flat. So this flat would be, let us say, 4 centimeters. This flat would be something like 2 centimeters. I don't know the exact numbers. You can find out on the internet if you are interested. But in an N-type wafer, you will have 2 flats. In a P-type wafer, you have 1 flat. Okay. In advanced technologies, or today, you do not even talk of flat. You talk of what is called as a notch. And that notch defines that this is the notch. So if my current flows in this particular direction, I will be using 111 kind of direction. So the notch not only defines that this is an N-type or a P-type, but it also tells where is the 111 plane or 110 direction, so to say, in that particular wafer, because the current flow, the electrical properties in different directions are different. So we also need to tell the user that this is how you should fabricate it. This is how you should place the wafer in your fabrication machinery. Okay. Any questions still here?
So in the ingot which we are making, will it have like uniform diameter throughout?
No, that is why we need to do grinding.
Okay, sir. So like, how can we know like what is the diameter of the ingot that is formed? Like, can we know it before creating the ingot?
Yeah, like the cooling rate, you can control the temperature of your furnace, you can do everything so that you can estimate. This is a physical model which actually can be easily made, and it is existing. So the speed at which you are pulling the wafer out and everything can easily be used to decide the size of the ingot.
Okay,
it's
sir.
a physical process, no? It's a purely physical process.
Okay,
Well
sir.
characterized physical process.
Sir?
Yes, Raghav?
So you said that when we were pulling out the ingot, we were pulling out in the direction which was corresponding to the orientation which we wanted. Right. So like now what exactly we are doing this is flats because we know that, okay, like this is the orientation I've got.
So that is the plane, Raghav. We are
Okay.
saying this is the plane. But in a plane also, for example, if we look at the plane, a face-centered cubic plane. So if I go in this direction, there will be one kind of resistance. If I go in this direction, there will be another kind of resistance. Are you able to see this?
Yes, sir.
So I need to tell which direction to go, because that is where all my models and all my everything is designed for.
Okay. So at the ingot level, I have only got the plane orientation, but now the
You will only
direction.
get planes now. Wafer, this is
Yeah,
only
yeah.
a big plane that now you need to know the direction also, so that you can actually then fabricate your gates in the right direction.
Within that plane.
Yes.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Okay. Deepank, you also
Sir.
wanted to ask something? Deepank? Gagandeep?
Yes, sir. So, sir, we are making this notch. So, and some amount of silicon would be wasted, right?
Yeah, that is why we now don't make a flat, we make a notch. Notch is a small thing. Flat would have really taken a lot of silicon off, but notch is a small thing. We don't want to waste silicon wafer area.
Can't we make a mark or something? Why cut silicon apart?
So this notch is also very small. If you make a mark, you will have to physically, visually see it and align it. A notch is easy because mechanically you can just lock your wafers into the notch when you are transferring wafers from one machine to another. A physical asymmetry is always easier to handle in the manufacturing processes than a visual asymmetry, because then you will need to have cameras and lasers and do everything to align the wafer every time. With a notch, you just need to get the wafer in, and the notch is already established and fixed in there, so the wafer is properly aligned.
Right.
So when we are talking about the orientation of a crystal, like the crystal is a spherical kind.
Is crystal spherical?
Like something else, I'm not getting that.
Crystal is, we look at crystalline structures in cuboid format, na? Cubic and face-centered
That is why we are
cubic.
talking about their orientations and okay, now my doubt is clear.
Okay.
सर जो हम लोग वेफर बनाते हैं, मतलब अब जैसे हमने यहाँ सबस्ट्रेट तैयार किया, तो अब हम लोग इसके ऊपर गेट डिजाइन करेंगे या फिर
So wait, Rajat, is everyone comfortable with Hindi language? Rajat is asking something in Hindi. Is everyone comfortable with that? Anyone who does not understand Hindi in this class, can you put a +1 in the chat window? Oh, so everyone is comfortable with Hindi. Oh, there is Teja who is not. Okay.
So no issue. So actually, currently we have designed a wafer. So we have prepared a substrate now. Okay, so we have doped and we have built substrate. Now what we'll do, we just build our gates or source and drain over it. So sir, that the thing is completely perpendicular to the surface. So now the current would flow from the top of the gate or from the top of the source or drain. So sir, exactly the current flow inside the substrate would completely would be decided by this flat what we are preparing, what, or it could random current, or it could be the direction would be some random thing.
So if you know that this is the 111 direction, and you want to orient or you want to have the current flow in a particular direction, you can make devices like that, such that the current will flow in your desired direction.
Okay, so then
one direction. This is the, so you've been given a reference now. See, consider it like this. You go to a amusement park and you get a map on how to navigate in this amusement park. What is the most important thing that you need to look at? Where are you? You are here, that map. Okay, I am here now. In this context, I can go left, right, wherever. But that you are here is most important, is it not?
Yes.
So this notch is the you are here mark.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, Gagandeep.
Yes, sir. When we are saying that I want to make the current run in only single direction, so does that mean I cannot make a MOSFET on layout which is in another orientation if I rotate it by 90 degrees?
So if you do, then there could be some consequences which may not be acceptable to you. We will see. We will just have a look at what happens when you rotate the wafer. There's a slide on that. Don't worry.
Okay.
Okay. So आगे बढ़ते हैं. So this is the next slide. So if you rotate the wafer, what happens? So until I would say 2002, 2004, 2006. So this is February 20, 2006. Look at this, huh? So until this time, wafers were made in this kind of a format, 110. So such that your current would flow in 110 direction. Okay. But Thomas Skotnicki proposed in 2006 to rotate the substrate such that current would flow in 100 direction. Now, why was this required, and how did it help? So the fact is that in silicon, there are two kinds of holes. Some are light holes. So light holes means that the gradation of change of your electrostatic field is sharp, and some are heavy holes. So if you look into this direction, or this hole, if you look into this plane, this hole would be a heavy hole. So in the standard wafers, there were light holes and also heavy holes, because there was a direction of movement which considered this bad slope, and also so this was symmetrical. इसके लिए किसी भी direction में आप move करो, whole mobility was not changing. But for this, the whole mobility was changing if you would move in one direction or the other. But when you rotated the wafer, what happened? When you rotated the wafer, you came to this part of the wafer where this extra lobe was not a part of your current flow, and therefore rotated wafers also had light holes only. So overall mobility of the holes improved. What does improved hole mobility mean? That now to get the same current, I can have a smaller device. So the P2N ratio, which was traditionally kept to be something like between 2.5 and 3, from this technology onwards, which was I think 65 onwards, hole mobility was significantly improved, and you could have P/N ratio closer to 2. Hole mobility was still worse than electron mobility, but it significantly improved just because you rotated the wafer. Okay, and there was actually no change in electron mobility, because for electrons, whether the wafers are rotated or not, the effective weight was same. So hole mobility improved, electron mobility remained same, no degradation on the electron mobility, and you got a win-win kind of a solution. You could save more area. Okay.
Sir?
That is the importance of understanding what the notch means and how to use the notch. Yes, Faisal.
Because of the mobility, the effective mass is changing, or because of the effective mass, the mobility is
Because of the effective mass, mobility is changing.
changing? Okay, sir.
Mobility is a behavior which depends on the mass. A heavier substance would move slower.
Yes, sir. Understood, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So once the wafer is ready, you know that I have to use rotated substrate and everything. Then you go into the manufacturing phase. And interestingly, in silicon manufacturing, there are a few steps which are just repeated over and over again. These are implantation, oxidation, and deposition. So implantation is in fact a front-end process, and deposition is then subsequently a back-end process. So what are we saying? That you will make layers of, so this is my silicon wafer, let us say. So you will first implant something onto it. After you implant it, you will make a layer of oxide. Okay. Then you will deposit something on it, which you would call as a photoresist. and then you will remove this photoresist in a patterned manner. Okay, so you will remove it from here, let us say. So over here, you've created a window such that this oxide becomes now visible to incident light. So when the light will come, it will now be able to fall here, but not fall here. Okay, stuff like that. So pattern removal, and then again implantation or pattern removal or oxidation or deposition, or some of these steps would come. You just repeat these over and over again, and you're finally able to build your silicon die. Consider it like this. If I have to make a 20-storied building, what do I need to do? Let us assume that we have come to the ground level now. So what do I need to do? I need to make pillars. I need to make the walls. I need to make the roof. For the next level, I again need to grow the pillars more. I need to make the walls. I need to make the roof, or whichever. Pillars, roof, wall, pillars, roof, wall, pillars, roof, wall. And I can go to as many stories as I want to. In the similar manner, the silicon manufacturing process also uses the same steps to overall build the wafer over and over again, to make multiple layers of metals and so on. Okay? So this is a primer, and this is an example. In fact, let us look at an example over here. We had a silicon substrate. We grew oxide on it, or we deposited oxide on it. Then we deposited photoresist on it. Then we exposed this photoresist. We exposed this photoresist to a glass mask. So you see over here, there is a black line there. So light will not pass. But over here, the glass is transparent, so light would pass. And this part of the photoresist would get exposed to this light. Now this photoresist, why is it called a photoresist? Because it is sensitive to photons. It is sensitive to light. Its chemical properties would change when light falls on it. So then you clean this wafer which was already exposed with acid, let us say hydrofluoric acid, HF, and this part which was exposed, that would go away. Now what you do, after this part goes away, now what you do, you etch. Etch means you remove whatever is available, visible from the top now. So this photoresist is hardened, it cannot be etched, but the remaining oxide which you had deposited in this phase, it will be etched. So now you have this kind of a structure in there. What will you do now? You will remove the photoresist and you will, let us say, implant boron. What would happen? Boron would not go beneath this oxide layer, but over here you will form a P+ region. Huh? Are you able to see this? Then when you need to make the next layer, all that you need to do is again deposit oxide. So you again deposit oxide, you again put a photoresist, you again expose now a different part, and so after that, after you expose that part, then something can be deposited over here in this region. Okay, we will look at it in a little more, we will exemplify it a little more in a few minutes. But what is essentially happening is that you have a light source and a condenser. So we are talking about optics now. So condenser would, what does a collimator do? Condenser do? It makes all the rays of light parallel. So what happens then? This is exposed to a mask where there are parts which are blacked out so that light cannot pass through it. And then after the mask, there is a projection lens which will again refocus these parallel lights into converging lights, and you will be able to expose underlying silicon wafer. So this is wafer already written there. You will expose the underlying silicon wafer with light. Okay. So as I mentioned, 193 nanometer light has been used for all these technos. Even in people have even tried 16 nanometer with 193 nanometer light. It is not very, so there is lots of diffraction, lots of things that come into picture, but people have even manufactured 16 nanometer chips with 193 nanometer light. So what they need to do is to manage the diffraction part. They need to say that, okay, if you want to make this kind of a poly, you make slits in the mask, you make dummy polys around it for this distance, so that after diffraction, I am able to achieve this poly shape accurately. So there are rules that are design rules that are added to be able to enable use of 193 nanometers even at advanced technologies. There are rules which say that two polys, if they are this close, let us say, then they will be made on two masks. So this will be mask A and this will be mask B. So this is called dual patterning. Why two masks? Because they cannot really be drawn this close with the 193 nanometer light there. There will be diffraction and one of the gates would die out. So you say, okay, I will first expose A. In the next step, I will expose B. So they're not actually made together. They are made just this one first at a time and this one at the other time. So there will be another B here. So in between B's, there is more spacing. And then between A's, there is more spacing. And there are very complex design rules to manage A and B independently. So this is called colored layout. So A is one color and B is another color.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Sir, is there something special with 193 nanometer light that we are using this to manufacture even smaller?
Yeah, this is argon-based laser. Okay. So that was the, so how do you get this wavelength of light? How do you get any light source? We studied that in physics, optics, 11th, 12th also. How do you get a light source? What happens?
So electrons jump from one level to another.
Yeah, electrons go to the outer level, outer orbital, and they fall to an inner orbital. And as they fall, they release energy because inner orbital has lower energy, and that energy comes out as light. So you cannot say that I will get 193 nanometer light and now tomorrow I will want 188 nanometer light. No, it doesn't happen like that. You have to find a material which will be able to give you that light. And we're now talking about lasers. What does a laser mean? That it is just one wavelength of light. So typically when you look at your tube light, it would generate wavelengths in the entire visible spectrum, is it not? All the wavelengths of light in the visible spectrum it will generate. But the laser pointer that you have, it will only generate infrared or red or some particular wavelength of light. So you're talking about lasers of different wavelengths. So you need materials to be able to generate that, is it not?
Yes, sir. So, but we can use other techniques like we may be doing by some means we can do fabrication inside a medium that is optically denser. So wavelength.
Yeah, so that is what that is already done. We use immersion lithography. You asked me about how does 193 figure in? 193 figures in because the material which is used to generate that laser is generating 193 nanometers. Finding a different material as a material scientist's work, and it is ongoing at a very, very high pace. That is how you finally arrived at EUV machines also that we were talking about in the last class. Because we could find a different material. But
so generating this light is also difficult.
Yes, more importantly, you need a laser. So just this wavelength of light, no other wavelength. Then you need to ensure that whatever this light source is, it can generate light for longer durations of time so that this light carries some energy with it and is able to expose and is able to work on the photoresist. So you need some energy to also be a part of it. Just that wavelength and two photons is not sufficient. You need a sufficient number of photons to be there to be able to react with the photoresist there. So you need some wattage. then it should be sustainable. It should be able to work for 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Because otherwise, your production will have to stop every now and then. You see, there are so many constraints.
Yes, sir. I get it.
Okay. Faisal, you had a question?
So, in this 193 nanometer technology, if we need A and B,
193 nanometer light technology is
not technology.
different.
Okay, so this
Yeah.
light, we want A and B to be close. So that is why we are using 2 masks, because it cannot be possible with this 193
Yes.
nanometer.
Diffraction will not let it happen.
That is why we were saying with 13 nanometer we can have A and B closer on the same mask, and that is how the number
Yes,
of masks.
and that is why we reduce the mask cost.
Yeah. Okay.
Very
now I
right.
understood, sir.
Yes.
Okay, sir.
Sir, so what is this term colored layout you have used?
Color layout means that, see, otherwise poly is just poly, for example. You just make all the polys same way. Color layout means that now there are 2 colors in the layout. Poly also is of 2 colors. So have you seen a layout in your refresher course?
Yes, sir.
So you see red color could be used for poly, green for active, and so on.
Yes, sir.
So all poly was red only, na?
Yes, sir.
In 16 FinFET or in advanced technologies, you will see poly is also in 2 colors, red and yellow, let us say.
Okay,
It
because
is poly layer. It
okay,
represents poly, but it is in 2 colors.
because they are coming from different masks. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Because
And
you
so,
want to manufacture them in different masks.
and so this is because we are doing, because we have to be, we want to counter the effects of diffraction, right?
Yes, because we want to use this cheaper source of light, 193 nanometer light, still as long as possible. EUV is costlier.
Okay, and so what was the concept of dummy poly, that how is different from this one? Because in both we are manufacturing poly. In one we are making more masks in dual patterning, but in dummy poly what we are
The
doing?
dummy poly is, for example, I just wanted to make A. Okay, I just wanted to make an A. This is simply not possible to make an A which is, let us say, 16 nanometers wide. So what you do is, there is not sufficient energy in the light. It's because the wavelength of light is 193 nanometer. In a slit of 16 nanometer, nothing will come through. So what you do is you also make slits here, so that the light diffracted from here will also reach here and expose the photoresist down here. So this is called as dummy poly.
Okay, so we are basically doing some technique within the same mask itself.
Yes, this is all optics.
Okay, okay. But here in dummy, here because of dummy poly, we're not increasing any mask cost, right?
No.
Yeah, same mask.
Same mask. Same mask. Okay. What is happening is that you may actually end up, so the next poly could only be here now.
Okay. We are basically exploiting the diffraction part of it.
Yes.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So I think till now you've already understood that VLSI is not just an electronics job. You have chemical engineers, material scientists, physicists, optical engineers, quantum physicists, and everyone involved in making electronics possible. Is this evident to you now?
Yes, sir.
It is not designers like you and me who have made VLSI hot. It is someone else.
Yeah.
We are just the front end.
Yes, sir. And sir, why did you say that the deposition was a back-end process? That will be...
No. So we will come to that.
Okay,
we'll come to the back-end layers. You will see that.
Okay,
Gagandeep, you had a question?
Yes, sir. Sir, when we talk that we are shrinking the technology, so mask also gets smaller.
Mask would be, mask size would depend on how big your die is. If your die has become smaller, then yes. If your die remains same, then no.
Sir, eventually then we will, we will also be using these techniques for making masks. So mask for a mask.
So mask, see, mask to आपको एक ही बार बनाना है ना, Gagandeep. So you can actually use plasma etching to make the mask. Kind of microscopic etching you can do to make the mask. That is still possible.
So it is
you need to make it only once. These devices you need to make millions of times, so you cannot really make every feature by hand. Mask you can actually make every feature by hand.
Yes, sir.
Okay. That is why mass making cost is very high in advanced technologies, because features have to be more handcrafted than stuff like that. Okay, so this was what I was talking about, that as you go to advanced technologies, mass costs are increasing. Okay, and this despite we are going to 193I. I stands for immersion. Immersion means that you use a liquid in the machine so that light passes through a liquid and overall numerical aperture changes and all the optics comes in. Okay, and because the mass costs are so high, it is extremely important. It is extremely important that whenever you put any design on silicon, it should be first time right. You cannot have reruns on silicon. See, software jobs are much easier. You make a bug, even then, you ship the product to the customer and you will say, oh, there is an update. On the air update your phone. Fine. A software bug can be corrected like that. Hardware bug, once it is there, then you have to go through the entire process of hardware designing over and over again. And the next product will come out only after 6 to 7 months at the earliest. So you cannot afford to have any bugs or errors left in your design when you sign it off. Okay. So a quick review or a quick view of how fabrication happens. So this is something that I myself also did in my master's program, because my university had a small fabrication facility there. But these photos are from a course from University of Maryland, so you can check that out online. But yeah, so what you do is you make a field oxide, and then by exposing light through a mask, you after etching get something like this. Okay. Then as a next step, you say that you would want to deposit polysilicon. So you grow gate oxide, and then you deposit polysilicon, and you etch out polysilicon from areas where you did not want a gate. So polysilicon and oxide are etched out from all this region, and you get what you call as a polygate. Are you able to realize this is something like a polygate that you would have seen? Then you start to, so this is how the images would, the microscopic images look like. And you see, this is the depth of the oxide that you had drawn, that you had manufactured, that you had grown. And the polygate is there. Then you do the doping of the source and the drain, which results in this N+ and regions being designed. And then you deposit metal. Once you deposit the metal, what do you do? Sorry, not metal. This is a oxide again, in which you will then create these slits. In these slits, you will then make a contact on the silicon source and drain region. You see these contacts appear like this. This is the contact on the poly region, the gate region. These are the contacts on the source and drain. And once you've made these contacts, you deposit a metal, and you remove the metal from the parts where you did not want a connection. So this is how your die looks like now. Okay. And I think this is the one that we worked on was something like 0.5 micron technology or something like that. And you see this kind, you made a contact and you wanted to make a wire over it. But you see what has happened? Such a large part of the contact, there is no metal. So if there is no metal, it means silicon is contacted with metal through a lesser surface area. So the real resistance of this contact will be higher than the resistance that you had wanted it to be. Are you able to see this? You wanted this resistance, this contact to be this big, but in reality, the contacted area is only this. So the current flow is now happening through a lesser area than earlier. So the resistance of this contact will be higher. than what you had intended it to be. And this is just 0.5 micron technology. Today we are talking of 5 nanometer. On 0.5 mein you see this is such inaccuracy. So 5 nanometer ko, just to get 5 nanometer working, the kind of precision you require in the machines is tremendous. It's a lot of hard work to ensure a working die there. Okay, a huge advancement in technology has enabled where we are today. Okay, so now we just saw how the first metal is drawn. So what is happening? There are oxidation stages where you make the gate dielectric, you make intermetal dielectric, and you also use oxide as mask. For example, when we had to deposit the metal, we used oxide as the mask, is it not? Wherever the metal, wherever the oxide was not there, metal could go down and contact with the source and drain region. So oxidation is used for different purposes. To deposit stuff, we deposited the gate in the example. We also deposited aluminum or the interconnects. Pattern removal means etching. And implantation is dopants to modify the electrical, doping the source and drain region. So you see these steps were done over and over again. Some were done twice, some were done once to be able to make the transistor that we just saw. And when you do it over and over again, you start to get what is called as multiple metal layers. So not just one layer of metal, but second, third, fourth. So in a typical, so even in the DK that you may have used during a fresher program, you would have noticed you could go up to metal 6, metal 7, and so on. So those metals were just extra stories that were built over the basic metal structure there. Okay. So we are on this slide, which is called dual Damascene process. Have anyone of you heard about dual Damascene?
Yes, sir.
What is dual Damascene?
So basically, we want to reduce a process step. When we want to make a via, so we do the etching twice and make a via that is of metal itself. We do not deposit anything else.
Okay. Madhur, you wanted to ask something?
Yes, sir. So how do we so we can control the area and the shape of these of everything by using the mask, but how do we control the height, like the deposition height of, let's say, the metal oxide that we were depositing? How do we control that height? We don't have
You deposit it for a longer duration of time.
Okay, sir. So duration. Okay. So longer duration means higher, bigger, right?
Yeah, you could do that, or you could let us say छोटा करना है तो कम duration के लिए करो, or you later on you do CMP, which is called chemomechanical polishing. So even if you look at the previous slides, what we were showing was that see what happened. Do you think this oxide was always this thick? Was it always this thick only? No. When you had fabricated the oxide, it would have been slightly wavy. You polished it. So that is called CMP, chemomechanical planarization. So you use chemicals and you use mechanical scrubbing to polish, planarize the surface. So when you do this, you can actually planarize it a little more and have lesser thickness there. Is it not?
Yes, sir.
So you could change the duration to increase or decrease the thickness, and then CMP is the process through which you can finally arrive at the exact thickness that you needed.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Sir,
Yes.
so while doing the metal one deposition, you said that we can use the oxide as a mask. So, but exactly we're not using oxide as mask, because where to etch in the oxide, that for that also we'll be using some other kind of mask.
For etching the oxide, there was a different mask, but for depositing the metal, oxide is the mask, is it not?
Okay, fine, sir. And so one more thing, sir, in a previous slide, you said that there was a point mentioned that using diffraction to enhance the resolution. That wasn't clear to me.
So थोड़ा सा optics देखना पड़ेगा राघव उसके लिए. You will
Okay.
see that in diffraction, and when a large wavelength of light passes through a slit which has lesser width, a width which is a slit which is smaller than the wavelength of light,
Yes,
light
sir.
diffracts.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
If you have multiple slits placed close to each other, light from the adjacent slits will also come below this first slit.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So the kind of energy that comes below the first one could be significant enough now to be able to cause the etching, whereas the light falling below slit 2 and 3 would be lesser than that.
Okay, so we are talking about the interference and
Diffraction. So we're talking about hardcore optics there.
Okay, okay, sir.
Okay. So for others, if it is really going over your head, don't worry. This is not a course on optics. This is not a course on fabrication also. This is just an introduction to fabrication that I want you to have, so that you can then choose your coursework appropriately, or you get to, if someone is asking you a question on VLSI in an interview, have a well-rounded view of everything, even if you have not done that exact course. You have better understanding of the overall ecosystem there. Okay, that is why I'm just covering it. So don't need to worry too much about it. Madhur, you have a question? Okay. So as Gagandeep said, so that dual damascene process is used to reduce a process step. It may not be as intuitive to all of you yet, but let me explain it to you. See, in a typical manufacturing process, what you do is if you look at this side first, what you do is you make an oxide, you put a deposit a photoresist, you do whatever, you expose light, you then etch. When you etch, you are able to make these holes in your system, so that these holes will now allow or deposit metal layers and whatever. Okay? So you would do this step for making a contact. You will do this step for making a via. So a contact is from silicon to metal 1. Okay. And a via is from any other metal 1 से लेके 5 तक to the next metal layer, metal 2 से लेके 6 तक. Okay. So contact is made out of tungsten. Vias, initially, let us say until 130 nanometer technology also, vias are made out of tungsten. Why tungsten? We will just come to that. But till that time, vias are made out of tungsten. After 130 nanometer, and wires at that time were made out of aluminium. So in more advanced technologies, wires are today made out of copper. So why do we need to shift to copper from aluminium? This is the physical property of copper versus aluminium.
Ductility.
Ductility. That coppers, you can make much thinner wires. And as you go to more advanced geometry, you wanted thinner wires. Additionally, copper is less resistive than aluminium. If you are making a thin wire, its resistance would increase. But by going to copper, you could reduce the resistivity also. So now the question comes up, if copper was less resistive and it is more ductile, why were we not using copper even earlier? Why were we using aluminium earlier? Why?
We wanted thick wires with this.
So you could always make thick wires with copper also. There would be still lesser resistance.
Did not have the technology.
अरे copper wires हम कब से बना रहे हैं? All your house fittings are also copper wire.
So maybe the copper interacts with the kind of may lead to some kind of effects that we wouldn't be wanting, or it is doing something to the process, to the whatever we are trying to manufacture, we're not getting the end product right. Maybe that could be the thing. Some kind of undesired effects may be coming to play, maybe.
Okay. Devjit?
Sir, using copper introduces more contact resistances in the active regions.
More resistance? Oh, copper तो less resistive है aluminium से.
Sir, show some affects with the oxide layer as well.
So it gets diffused
The
into
cost
the
or
oxide.
conditions.
And that's why we use tungsten.
Okay. So what happens is copper, gold, and silver, when they interact with silicon, they create energy states inside the band gap, deep inside the band gap. See, why is silicon a very good semiconductor? Because it has a band gap of 1.12 electron volts. All of you remember this 1.12 electron volts? So this band gap, what does it ensure? That the electrons over here have to jump, have to be given of energy of at least 1.12 volts, so that they will start to conduct. So this is the switching behavior of a MOSFET or any device also, that you apply some voltage so that electrons, you kind of surmount this band gap and stuff, and electrons go from here to here. You need that kind of voltage, and that is where it is a semiconductor. Now, what copper, gold, and silver do is they make intermediate energy states in the middle of these band gap. So now an electron can easily jump from here to here, and then with the same energy kind of stuff, move from here to here. So now instead of 1.12, you require a voltage of only, let us say, 0.57 to conduct. So your semiconductor no longer is as good as it was earlier. Okay. So that is why copper usage was avoided in the semiconductor manufacturing process for a very, very long time, until we were hit with the wall कि अब copper के बिना काम चलेगा ही नहीं. Okay. So everywhere there is copper today, but the contacts still remain to be tungsten. Why? Because you do not want copper to come in contact with silicon at all. So in fact, in fabs, the copper part of the fab is physically 100, 200 meters, 300 meters far away from the front end part of the fab where contacts are made. So you do processing on wafers until contact level over here, and then you physically shift the wafers to the other side. There is a different clean room altogether which you will need to go to, and then you will do the processing of metal 1 and upwards. Okay, so contacts continue to be tungsten. Vias have moved from tungsten to copper, because with copper you could do a different thing. With copper, what you could do was you could make 2 tiers of etching. So you see, आपने यहाँ पे first tier of etching करा, and then what you did, you deposited the resist on it again, and you made another exposure. And with that, after that exposure, you made the second level of etching done. So now when you deposit copper over here, you will make a via and also the metal in one step. So this saves cost. This is called as dual damascene process, which was enabled by copper. And the major, it really changed the way we handle devices, because as soon as dual damascene process was enabled, defectivity reduced significantly, and you could go to many more number of metal layers. So until there was aluminum, you could only think of 4 or 5 metal layers. But today, you can very easily think of even 11, 12 metal layers. Every extra metal layer is extra cost, but at least if you want, you can get them because of the dual damascene process. Okay.
So
yes.
So how? So before the 130 nanometer, we were using aluminum for wires, but for via we are using different kind of things.
Tungsten.
Okay, for via we are tungsten, then aluminum, but now we are using for via and wire copper.
Yes.
So, but then how it is reducing the defectibility? I mean, you just mentioned.
Okay, so you tell me one thing. I make one step, and let us say I have to make a, how do we put it? I have to we just saw an example. Now we made contacts and then we deposited metal over it. What happened? There was more defectivity because there were two different steps. Is it not?
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So if I were to make the contacts and metals in one step, it will automatically always fill the contact fully, na?
Okay. Okay. So basically, we are
We are
getting
reducing the cost, the defectivity due to misalignment.
Okay. Okay. We are doing the deposition only once. So,
Yes.
okay. It is flowing. Okay. Okay. Fine, sir.
So overall cost of your chip would reduce.
Yeah. Okay, sir.
Okay. So dual damascene process enables that. What we really need to realize is that with copper, because we just understood that copper can diffuse into silicon and can lead to interstitial, those intermediate states and completely spoil the functioning of your device. So for copper, you need to be extremely careful and you need to put a barrier around copper wires, so that this copper doesn't diffuse out of the wire region. Otherwise, copper will very easily diffuse into the oxide. And from oxide, it will very easily go into the substrate also. So you need to make this barrier. Now, when you were at 65 nanometer, what happened? You made a barrier which was, say, 5 nanometer thick, and you were still fine. But as you go to a finer geometry, what happens? Now the barrier width has not changed, but your wire width has reduced. So the effective resistance increases significantly. So we are continuously looking for, as we go to advanced technologies, we are continuously looking for advanced barrier materials also. Okay. जैसे this was PVD का full form क्या था? Plasma कुछ deposition, and this is atomic layer deposition. You actually deposit this atom by atom. So we are going to advanced technologies so that this barrier thickness we can reduce somehow. So using copper has improved yield, has improved stuff, but it has also led to more complexity in manufacturing processes. We will look into this aspect a little in more detail later also. Okay. So what do we do? See, we are almost done with the class time, but there are 3 or 4 more slides. Should I continue, or do we want me to stop and then continue in the next class?
So is it okay if we stop right now?
It's already too much.
Not that. Actually, it's Friday, and if I miss the namaz near my home, then I have to go 10 to 11 kilometers. That's why.
Okay. Okay. So would you be okay by watching the recording? Or if others are okay, can we just continue for 5 more minutes and then you can watch the last 5 minutes of recording later? Is that okay?
Okay. Yeah, that will be okay.
Because recording so we will be sharing anyways, है ना?
Yeah. Okay. Okay, sir.
If there is some question, you can ask me in the office hours.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Others, are you okay with another 5 minutes of the class?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Because then we will complete the fabrication part and we will move to the devices in the next class. It will make it, a consistent thing then. Okay. And if you're tired and you want to leave, you can watch the recording the last 5 minutes later also. Okay. So we said that fabrication is a piece of art. You see that we wanted to fabricate a wire like this, but we ended up fabricating something else. We also did an experiment that if I want to, did we do that experiment? Okay, let us do it now. You have a pen and a paper with you. You write your name exactly the same way 10 times. You write your name 10 times, trying to make each version a replica of the earlier ones. Please do that. Write your name 10 times. Once you're done, put a +1 in the chat window. You know why I'm asking you to write your name? Because your name is the most, wonderful sound to your ears. You hear it the most. So this is the most beautiful sound for you. I want you to write your name 10 times, trying to match the earlier versions. And then tell me if all the 10 words exactly the same or not. Were they the same? Are all the 10
No,
versions
sir.
of those
No,
same?
sir.
No.
No, sir.
What happened? There were some variations that came.
That too was
I just asked you to write your name 10 times. How many transistors do you want to make on every die?
million, billions.
Billions of transistors. अब अपना नाम 10 बार तो सही से लिख नहीं पा रहे. And we're talking of a machine to manufacture millions of transistors exactly the same way. Can it ever happen?
No, sir.
No, there will be what is called as variations. So as we go to advanced technologies, this variability starts to bother us. Come to think of it like that. In 65 nanometer technology, the gate oxide thickness is only 12 angstroms, which is only 2 to 3 molecules of silicon dioxide. Add one more molecule, and what has happened? The gate oxide thickness has changed by 25 to 30%. Let us look at the gate length. Let us say I etched the length a little more. So instead of 60 nanometers, I ended up manufacturing 55. What happens? Performance improves a bit, 8% performance change. Leakage goes by more than 30%. 60 ki jagah, I ended up making 55. Now, let us say this 5 nanometer error I make in a 22 nanometer technology with 18 nanometer gate length. What happens now? So over here, what was the error? Okay, the error was less than 10%. What will be the error over here? If I make a 5 nanometer error, it will be almost 30%. Are you able to see this? So small errors which were handleable or manageable with some margins in earlier technologies are today completely unacceptable. So when we go to advanced technologies, not only do we need to work on wavelength of light and this and that, we also need to work a lot on instrumentation so that your instruments are very, very accurate. So scaling is not just about you and me and electronics engineers any longer. It is all about a lot of technology people making it work for us. Are you able to see this? Any questions? Okay.
So in this slide, what is this high-k dielectric thing which you mentioned?
Yeah, we'll come to that later. High-k dielectric. So what happens is in advanced technologies, so already see the gate oxide was 12 angstroms, 2 to 3 molecules of silicon dioxide. When you scale, you need to go to an effective oxide thickness of 8 angstroms.
Yes, sir.
So that is just 1 to 2 atoms, 1 to 2 molecules.
Okay, yeah.
You see the variability would increase so much. So what was done was, instead of silicon dioxide as the gate dielectric, we used high-k materials as gate dielectric. So that physical thickness of the oxide would be something of the order of 20 angstroms. But in terms of silicon dioxide, the effective thickness would be in the ratio of the high-k. So effectively, gate oxide thickness is 8 angstroms, but physical gate oxide thickness because of a high-k dielectric is 20 angstroms. So variability reduces.
Okay, so now we are playing with the chemical properties of that.
Yes.
Okay.
Materials. Okay. So we mentioned about clean rooms. So there are a huge range of different standards of clean rooms, and you see there was a class 100,000 clean room earlier. We felt it is good enough. We came to class 1 and we realized the clean room capability is no longer good enough. So we had to define a completely different standard, an ISO standard, where further advanced clean rooms have a name which the earlier terminology did not even have. Okay. And these clean rooms are really like sacred places. If you want to enter into a clean room, you have to wear extra layers of clothing over your regular clothing. That's you see all these kits that doctors have been wearing in this COVID times. So the technology engineers wear 2 such kits every time they enter into a clean room. A very high pressure is maintained inside the clean room, so that even if you open the door, because of high pressure, the air would come out of the clean room and not enter. So no dust can enter into the clean room from outside. So high pressure is maintained. Yellow light is used so that even by accident, you do not expose any photoresist or anything. And as I already mentioned, a separate clean room for implant at wafer level and deposition of copper. So clean rooms are something that are, again, a completely logistics management of a VLSI facility is a completely different beast. So my attempt over here is just to share with you कि कितना कुछ जाता है. So many people ensure that you and I are able to design what we are designing well. Okay. This is, so whatever we design, we have to test, and only good stuff, only good wafers and good dies need to be shipped to customers. So there are a range of tests that every die needs to go through. And, a test equipment, just one machine could be $1 million. Today, machines are actually much costlier. Even $5 million and $10 million machines are there, because you have to test so many devices. You have to operate them at a higher frequency. So machines have also become costlier. And realize that the overall cost of test, a huge 57% of the cost, even at this time, was depreciation cost. So there is a huge research effort that we as designers are also taking up to reduce the cost of test. So even in my group, we are working quite extensively on reducing the cost of test for SRAMs in my group. But yeah, across the board, people are working on methods to reduce the cost of test. There is a huge research effort going on packaging, because not just about it is not just about power dissipation or stuff like that. Packaging, when we talk about more than more and having imager and processor and memory in the same die, so packaging is also becoming more complex. There is a lot of research happening on packaging also. Additionally, because we want more speeds, the typical inductive effects of the package start to figure in. So just exposing you to different research areas associated with VLSI. And this is how the power generation on our chips has increased. Okay, but this is how the air cooling capability is. So air cooling capability will remain largely constant, is it not? Air can cool only this much, can dissipate, remove only this much of heat from a given area in a given amount of time. After that, you start to use fans and all that. But in reality, today, even in your mobile phone, so if you look at Qualcomm's latest chips specifications, you will see mobile phone application processors also use what is called as liquid cooling, so that you can remove heat much faster and your chip can function at the required performance level. Okay, so I think, yeah, this kind of brings me to the end of this session. I know I had to rush through to the last few slides, but frankly, there was not much to know about or talk about, except I wanted you to be introduced to these domains and challenges in VLSI manufacturing processes also. If you have any questions, please shoot. Yes, Madhav.
So why are there only a handful of companies in the world that do fabrication?
Because it is so complex and so costly now. Only until you have very deep pockets, you cannot afford to put that kind of money in there, na?
So what stops a company like Reliance or Tata to make a fabrication facility, indigenous fabrication facility?
Oh, indigenous fabrication facility in India. So many things, first is that to be able to have so first thing you realize is that fab is costly. Itna aapko samajh mein aa raha hai? such complex equipment, such things need to be there. So making a fab, setting a fab is a very costly process. Are you able to understand this?
Yes, sir.
So then once you have a fab made, you would want to utilize it 24/7, 365 days a year.
Yes, sir.
Do you know one single fab consumes what kind of water and electricity?
I don't know, sir.
So it requires hundreds of megawatts of electricity just to run one fab. India is yet not an electricity energy surplus country. We have regular power cuts in summers where we say that okay, industry will pay this higher price, and there will also be power cuts that industry has to face because the residential consumers should get the power. I and you should sit in AC, so industries use their generators to generate their power. They are given power cuts, load shedding hota hai. So one aspect, availability of abundance of water. Second aspect, we don't have water supply in our cities. Even Delhi mein there are areas where there is no regular water supply. We are the capital city here. So there are many reasons where our infrastructure is lacking. Okay. So it is not just setting so in India, it is not just about establishing the facilities, now also ensuring that you have the electricity made available to you, you have water made available to you. So the overall cost of establishing a fab increases much more in India. And as soon as that happens, the products that you will make will be costlier than products that are made in TSMC or in a Samsung fab in Korea. So why would anyone come to you?
Sir,
so even if you make a fab, you will not be able to sell to anyone.
So if we use the same technology or similar technology that is being used for TSMC or Samsung or any other Japan companies.
So in TSMC and Samsung, these electricity and water are provided by the government. Over here, this thing has to be ensured by the manufacturer himself, because supply hai nahi. I have to set up my captive power plant to be able to do this. So that is extra cost in making the fab now.
Okay, so it should be a combined effort by government as well as private sector.
Yes, it's all about economics. So government is saying we are giving you so much subsidy, ab to bana lo. But the government is not realizing that the economics of a fab is much bigger than just setting up that fab. It is about ensuring that there is uninterrupted power supply, that the labor is, the labor laws are such that you're able to use the fab 24/7, 365 days a year, and so on. So there are many constraints because of which, even though people have shown intent, so as of now, Tata Group has shown intent to participate in a semiconductor fab, but till now, all these attempts have fizzled out because it is a very costly affair. It's a very high risk, and the Indian government is not willing to take up the bill of that risk. And why should it? Because if the profits come, they will go to the private party. Then why should the loss come to the government? The government is right in its own terms. But then should the government expand the semiconductor complex, for example, that we have in Mohali, which is a government fab? So these are tough questions to answer. But yeah, some answers would come from the bare economics of it. That economics do not allow it to be done in India yet. And also look at it like this: you invest $1 billion to make a fab, how many jobs do you create? For the government of India, if they would invest that kind of money in the education sector or in medium and small industry sector, they will be able to create much more jobs. So both सारे dimensions हैं Madhur इसके. It's not a simple answer.
Yeah, yes, sir. So even designing and verification part is done in India a lot, but eventually the fabrication is done outside. So
yes, because designing and verification does not require that kind of an infrastructure. No? It requires machines, CPUs you can purchase. Even there are lots of constraints. You go to any of these companies and you talk to the finance people, the asset managers, they will just pull their hair. Something that, uske andar bhi government has such constraints today that Even that is a difficult thing to do, but okay, because of people like you who are good, who will turn out to be good designers, companies still want to set up shop in India. Okay, otherwise वो भी नहीं होगा.
Okay, sir.
Okay, Animesh.
Sir, I have seen posts like post silicon validation engineers. What do they do? I do not know. What do they do? How do
Okay,
they
so
participate in this flow?
post silicon is after silicon is ready. So what do you need to do? You need to test. So when you test, so testing can be done. You just bring a testing machine to India and you bring the wafers and you can test here. है ना? So testing is done in India. More than that, you can test and then you can debug. Okay, by using stuff like BIST, by using stuff like scan chains, built-in self-characterizers, you can identify where the failure is. And then you can help make the next version of the design better. So that is post silicon validation.
I thought these all BIST and scan chains were already tested while we were designing and performing every verification.
Yeah, but that is still pre-silicon, na? Silicon ke baad bhi to you will test. So post-silicon validation is that, okay, I wanted this functionality. So let us say like this. I make a set-top box chip. I get the silicon. Now I have to ensure that the silicon is able to run the entire suite of programs, whether it is Netflix or whether it is ZTV or whether it is simple cable TV relay. Whether it is an app or whether it is a simple cable TV relay, and it should be secure. There are so many functionalities linked to this piece of silicon that I have just fabricated. Is it not?
Yes, sir.
That needs to be validated. You do not even need a tester to do that. You use the tester, you got the product out. Now that you have the product in hand, which is seemingly all correct, we need to validate that all the functionality that I wanted it to have, does it have it?
Yes, sir.
Is my software properly correlated with the hardware that I have manufactured yet? So all that is part of post-silicon validation.
Got it, sir.
Okay. Anything else? Great. So I'm extremely sorry, guys. We extended it a bit, but I really wanted to be interactive, and therefore, as the questions were coming, I did not stop any one of you from the questions. I believe questions are healthy because they help you understand concepts better. So we took a little longer in today's class. We will close some other class earlier. Don't worry. Okay. All the best, guys, and see you later. I'm stopping the recording.
So